All right, so hi everyone, and welcome back to a new video. Welcome to my channel. And today we're welcoming Tillie, who is one of the people that took my course, and she has a really beautiful recovery story to share with you guys today. So, welcome, Tillie. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is really
Yeah,
exciting.
you're very welcome. All right, Tilly. So actually, this is the first time we're meeting as well. So I'm really excited and curious to hear a bit about your story and about your situation. So why don't you start a bit by just quickly sharing what your story was, what your experience was with DPDR, existential anxiety, and just kind of telling us a bit about what you struggled with.
Yeah, sure. I wrote down some notes, so if I'm looking down, it's because I don't want to miss anything.
Go ahead.
So yeah. So I first experienced it about 8 months ago, so the start of September 2022.
Yeah.
And I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd had like anxiety kind of on and off, but nothing of the intensity and like the extremity of DPDR. So it was very unnerving to say the least. And yeah, it was a lot of people have had this. It was a bad high, a bad weed experience, and I'd been quite experienced with that, so I wasn't going into it being like, ooh, like how is this gonna go? Like it was just a normal day for me. And then I just ended up getting way too high and just completely like the second I felt I was too high, I already felt this like sense of like doom and like sense of fear that I'd never felt before. Because already when you feel like too high, it's like that sense of being out of control. That in itself is super scary. And then I started having these intrusive thoughts about like space. And I remember specifically this one thought I had, which was like, oh my goodness, we don't know why we're here. We don't know the meaning of life. Like, and that to me was the most terrifying thing in that moment. And I remember just like feeling like my world had just collapsed. Like I just like woken up to this truth. Like it was very scary. I was actually with a friend at the time, and I was trying my best to remain calm because I didn't want to freak him out. And I remember looking at him and thinking like, oh my gosh, is he real? Like, are we just robots? It was super scary. Like the most fear I felt in a single moment in my whole life probably.
Yeah.
Um, so I was just like, okay, I need to go calm down. I need to go to my room. So I went to my room, tried to distract myself, tried to watch some videos, just tried to like calm down. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm gonna feel fine in the morning. I just need to sleep. I just need to sleep this off.
Mhm.
And then the next day, I woke up. Spoiler alert: I did not feel fine. I woke up and I felt still high, but in the most horrible, daunting, terrifying way. I woke up feeling like my whole perspective had just changed, and I was so confused. I was like, why am I still feeling this way? I thought I was like broken. I've heard a lot of people say that they think like they wake up and they think their brains like changed. So I googled it because I was like, goodness, what's going on? And I read that it was probably DPDR.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry for the quick interruption, people. The connection was a bit off, but we're back now. So the last thing that Tilly was talking about was when you were researching like what was happening and you realized that it was DPDR.
Yeah, okay. I remember now. So yeah, so I went online, I realized what I was dealing with, and I was like, okay, this is what we're dealing with here. And I kind of like went to YouTube trying to watch some videos. But it's hard when there's so much different information coming from different sources, and obviously what works for one person might not work for the other. So I kind of like I didn't start your course until like a few months in because I was still struggling, and I was like, okay, enough is enough here. Like I need to properly help myself. So I felt bad for like properly really bad for a good like 4 weeks, like over a month of like just trying to remind myself. So I wrote down like the 3 points I was trying to remind myself during this period, and it was number one, that I wasn't broken. Number two, this isn't permanent. I will feel normal again. And
Mhm.
number three, just my brain trying to keep me safe after a stressful event.
Yeah.
And this was kind of what I'd remind myself because during those couple weeks afterwards, I had like little moments where I felt normal again. And it was those moments that really helped me to like push forward, because I knew that I could feel normal. Because I think one of the scariest things is feeling like you're stuck like this forever.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you have just like, even just like 10 minutes of feeling like back to normal, this is really what I focused on to help me push through. Because I was like, if I can feel normal again, then I know when I have moments of feeling super disconnected and super out of it, I know that I can get through that and feel better again.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So was your DPDR chronically there like then? So you constantly experienced it, and what were your symptoms exactly?
so I had it, I would say like chronically for like consistently for like over a week, which I know like isn't very long compared to a lot of people. And I consider myself lucky in that sense. But I also think it's good to show people that you don't have to be stuck like that for like years, because I think that was like one of the things that I read when I was researching was people saying like, oh, I've been like this for 10 years. And that was like, oh my goodness, like I can't stay like this for 10 years. I was so like, okay, that's not going to happen to me. I need to like just follow the guidance that I found and try to like see it for what it is. So I had it like chronically for like a week, and then I think after a week I started to have like little moments of feeling better, but
Yeah.
I still was like majority feeling bad for like a good few months.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it was after like, I think it was December, so I had it in September. In December, that's when I started your course, I think. Um, and that was like such a relief for me. And I remember thinking that as soon as I signed up, it was almost like the DPDR like didn't go away, but I just felt relieved because I knew that the help was there and I knew that I could get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the saying like anxiety is just fear of fear. So once you realize that there's nothing to be scared of and that you can deal with it, that was something that really minimized my symptoms, because I knew that if I had it, I could get through it because I'd done it before. And every time it came up, it wasn't different than the time before, it was the same. So just having that like support and knowing that I could get through this just minimized it so much for me.
That's
Um,
really nice to hear. So two questions. The first question that I have is, like, if you could tell like us a little bit about like what you actually experienced, like what your thoughts were, what your maybe DPDR symptoms were, like what did you actually experience during those months? Because that too can differ from person to person.
yeah, sure. So it was the actual physical sensation was feeling super disconnected. Like I didn't feel like I was here. I felt like everybody around me was fake.
Mhm.
Um, I felt like super like always constantly like lightheaded. Um, kind of I've heard people compare it to like a dream. Like you do feel like you're not like connected and everything's like really weird. You feel like you're still high, but like paranoid high, like you get super paranoid. And the main thing that I dealt with was existential questions.
Yeah.
And this was anytime they came up, it was like instant anxiety, instant like deeping it, thinking like, oh my goodness, like I don't know this, like I don't know this, like going to the worst case scenario. I would say that the existential questions was my biggest challenge. And it was interesting because before the DPDR, I'd always loved talking about that stuff. Like I studied philosophy at school, I studied philosophy at uni. So these questions, and I know you had a similar
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I can relate.
And that I guess kind of like that the perspective of, well, these things didn't scare me before, so why would they scare me now? Oh, it must be just the anxiety that's the problem, not the actual topic. And I remember watching one of your videos, which was like existential questions. When you're thinking about them and you're fearing them, it's because you're thinking of them from the ego and you're thinking from a state of fear.
Yeah,
And it's you
exactly.
like rebalance yourself, calm, like breathe, calm your nervous system down. You can look at them from another perspective. And every time I change the perspective, it's like amazing. It's super beautiful. I feel so grateful to be part of this. I find the mystery of everything super like cool. It's like cool, we're all in this like mystery together. Like we're all in this together. We might not know, but it doesn't change anything.
Is that
That's
how you're
kind of
feeling now?
Is it, sorry, what did you say?
That would you say that's how you feel again now? Like, can you like look at philosophy and stuff again? Is that like how has that been for you now?
Yeah, so most of the time, 100%, because before the DPDR, I was very like in touch with my spiritual side. Like I love meditating. I love like hearing about people's like near death experiences, which I'll also talk about because that's another thing that helped me with the existential questions. Um, I was like super. I loved hearing about this stuff. Like this was like my passion. I loved talking to people about it. So now I'm kind of like 90% normal again when I think about the questions. Sometimes I'll think about it and I'll have anxiety, but I think that's just by association from the original DPDR. And my boyfriend actually really helped me with this when, because I had so much anxiety about them when I was with him, because I was always with him, and he kind of sat me down and he was like, look, if you actually really think about it, no matter what the answer is to any of these questions, does it actually change anything about your life? And at first I was kind of like, yes, it does, like yes, because this and because that, like I'm scared about like life after death, all of this. And then the more I kind of like repeated that, I was, it doesn't actually change anything. Like I'm here, I'm experiencing this, we're all experiencing this. And I think that's what we're here to do, experience. And no, nothing of like why we're here or like what the point of this is actually changes that we're here and that we're experiencing this.
Yeah.
So that's like the one thing that I say to myself anytime I get the thoughts. I'm like, okay, maybe, but doesn't change anything.
Exactly. That's very similar to me. I think like there's always going to be that 5% just remembering the trauma of like how intense the anxiety was over these existential questions. And that's often why sometimes, you know, you'll get a random thought again or you'll get a random like insight. But it's very quickly, once you're into the habit of like really embodying the acceptance, you can go like, does this change anything? Like if I go into the thought now, if I go into this fear, does that actually change anything? And the answer is no. So yeah, my second question was like, because you said you felt like you finally committed to your recovery. Like, what do you think held you back for such a long time? Was it the fear that it wouldn't work? Because that's something I hear from a lot of people, or what was it about?
I think, yeah, I think it was the fear that I would always have this and the fear that I would always be stuck this way. Because once you have this experience, like I think I described this before, but it's you feel like you've woken up to like the truth and you feel like, oh my goodness, I know this. And that was something that one of my symptoms was I felt like I was walking around and everyone else was like zombies, like asleep, like walking around. And I was thinking like, I'm crazy, like why is no one else thinking this? I
Yeah,
felt like I was kind of Neo in the Matrix, like he's woken up.
yeah,
And now that I look back, I'm like, well, I didn't really wake up to anything because the same thing that I realize is the same thing that I discuss in my philosophy classes.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
don't have to you don't have to feel like you're crazy to think about these things and like wonder about these things because people spend like their days and times writing books about this and they're not like anxious, they're just thinking like, oh cool, like this is really interesting.
definitely.
um but sorry, to go back to my point, it was definitely the fear of thinking that I couldn't because it was kind of like you've woken up and there's no going back. But then the more I heard people's success stories, like yours especially, because yours sounded so um, scary and like sinister almost, and I was like, if she's now at peace, so can I. So can I. So that's why I agree. Like the importance of sharing these stories is super helpful because no, like if you hear someone's success story, like they're no different from you. It can definitely happen for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. So like once you then made that decision and obviously you took my course, like what were some of the things that you feel like now looking back, what was the turning point inside of you? Like what changed within you and so what were some things that you did or what were some like things that you feel really helped you get through this and heal?
So probably the main thing was and I remember like this was a heading of one of the modules in the course, which was acceptance. I think trying to once you accept that this has happened and you're feeling this way, and it's here, it's happening. You don't have a choice. Um, I kind of tried to change my perspective, and I know this is with everybody because I know the symptoms can be super horrible. Um, but I kind of try to change my perspective and view it as a positive thing.
Yeah.
So as like, this is my body looking after me. This is amazing. Like, my body's so great that when I'm super terrified, it has this method of trying to kind of numb itself and make me feel disconnected because the fear is too much. So when I see it for what it is, as like, okay, this is my brain keeping me safe. It's super uncomfortable because I'm not used to this, but I just kind of have to ride the wave. And I know that I watched a video once from this other coach who said people spend money and time trying to feel like high and like a little bit messed up and like drunk. So I was like, okay, I feel weird. I feel super uncomfortable, but it's happened now. I don't have a choice. So I'm just going to go through life being a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, feel a little bit like messed up and like, because I don't have a choice. And it's amazing because once you accept it and you kind of change your perspective and like, okay, I'm going to try and enjoy this.
Yeah.
That lowered my anxiety so much because I didn't fear it anymore. I was like, okay, this is happening. I'm feeling this way. I know it's going to go because it has to go because this is just like a temporary thing.
Yeah.
So whilst I have it, I accept it. And in the moments where the anxiety was a lot, to the point where like I was like, okay, I can't enjoy this. What really helped me was the breathing exercises that you mentioned in the course. That's really good in the moment to kind of just rebalance the nervous system. Another thing that I want to mention that really, really helped me is EFT tapping. I don't know if you're familiar with it. This, like, I'm using this in all areas of my life now. Completely life changing. And there's a YouTuber called Brad Yates who does loads of videos. There's one on dissociation, there's one on intrusive thoughts, and there's one on fear and worry. And for anyone who's watching that doesn't know about EFT, you kind of like just tap on the points and you kind of say like affirmations out loud to kind of change your perspective and beliefs on things, especially the one on dissociation, because he was saying something like, my brain has decided to do this to keep me safe. I recognize this. And I questioned this. Do I need, is there something I need to fear right now? Do I need to feel this way? Just stuff like that really, really helped me. Yeah.
I think a lot of people expect the recovery to be like a snap out of it or like a very quick fix, but often that's not the case. I was just wondering, what was that like for you? Like, did you see a gradual, like, kind of lowering of the anxiety and the symptoms, or was it like a really rapid kind of switch for you? Like, how would you say that kind of happened, and maybe how long once you started, practicing everything to recover and once you were recovered?
Yeah, it was definitely like super up and down. I've read a lot of people talking about like setbacks and how frustrating they can be, and I completely understand because I'd have like kind of like maybe a few months into it, like right before I started the course, I'd have like 3 days of feeling great. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm over this, sick. And then I'd have a day where I was like, oh my goodness, I feel awful right now. And it would be super frustrating because you'd think, oh my goodness, has all my process left, has all my progress, sorry, just gone down the drain. And what I kind of say to myself was, I'd remind myself again, what's happening. It's my brain keeping me safe. And this is a temporary thing. And I almost saw it as something that's just like wearing off. So if you imagine like the DPDR is like a full jar of water, and eventually the water's going to go, and then it's going to stop for a little bit, and you're going to feel bad again. And then the water's just going to keep decreasing, keep decreasing, keep decreasing, because it had to wear out. And this is what I kept telling myself, it has to go, because it went for you, it went for hundreds of others. So in the times where I had like little setbacks, I would just remind myself again what it is. And because I had felt normal, I was like, I know I'm going to feel normal again.
Yeah, that's a very strong thing what you just said. I think the awareness, like, because acceptance is such an important part in it, and in the beginning acceptance is so difficult because it still feels like something persistent and like a thread. So I feel like difficult challenge of the recovery process is just getting to that point where you can accept, or like finding ways to accept. Because once you do that and you start to feel better, you start to have more proof that you can actually get through it. And that
Yeah.
makes it easier to then accept, so that when you're in a setback, you'll know, like, okay, this is temporary, there's going to be another good day. And that's kind of when it starts to speeden up. So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. And the hardest part was the first initial weeks because, like you say, it's if you haven't experienced much of feeling normal, then it's hard to kind of logically think to yourself, oh, well, I felt normal. Um, so yeah, it's definitely tough. It's definitely tough. But I think like the tool, like even just having your course already gave me like part of that acceptance, because I knew that there was this like body of work that had been successful for so many other people and
Yeah.
successful for you, that already just helped me so much with the acceptance, because
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, if other people can do this, so can I. um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely tough, definitely
I
tough.
think you have a really beautiful mindset towards this. Like, I can feel that you're, and this is, I once made a video about like the qualities I see in people that tend to recover quickest, or like quite fast, or just have a productive recovery. And I feel like that aspect of like optimism is very strongly present. And I can see that in you too, like where it's, you are struggling, but there's also just this thing in you that's like, I am not gonna be the one that's gonna recover for 10 years. Like, I am gonna get through this, and more holding on to the positive things, even if it's just 10 minutes where you feel good. Like, that optimism, I think, is probably one of the things that also got you through, just because of that. It's such an important aspect to have.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
um Definitely, like I've been trying, just like in my life in general, to kind of get out of like victim mentality in general. I know it can be really like really hard, especially when you're physically and like struggling and really feeling horrible. Because it's when you're feeling that way, it's easy just to be like, why me? Why am I dealing with this? And I've struggled with OCD and like intrusive thoughts, and going through that has just taught me that like I am like, even though it doesn't feel like it, I'm in control. I'm in control of my life. I'm in control of my reality, and it's up to me to kind of pull myself out of it. You can have help, you can have support, of course, but at the end of the day, it's for me personally, I felt like it was a choice. I could either choose to kind of wallow in this and be like, oh, this is so hard, and I still had days of that, of course, when it kind of just gets too much. I'm like, oh, like I'm so sick of this. Why is this happening to me? But then on the other days, I'd be like, look, this is happening, but I'm going to choose to get myself through this. I'm going to choose to get myself out of this. I'm going to follow the steps, and I'm just going to accept the hard days, and I'm just going to like pull myself out of this. So that
Awesome.
was, and I know it sounds easier said than done, but just practice, and like be your own mentor, be your own like motivator. That's honestly like what helped me.
Wow. How do you look back now, like now that you're recovered? Like, do you look back to this period and say, like, I wish it did not happen? Do you feel grateful for it? And if so, like, what do you feel like this experience has taught you?
I definitely feel grateful for it. I stand by the saying, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Because I honestly do believe that, I know this can sound really like, to anyone that's struggling, this sounds really like not condescending, but to say that it's almost like a gift, it might sound like super like crazy to people who are still like in the darkness of this. But I honestly believe that any mental challenge is just an opportunity to level up.
Yeah.
And like on the other side of this, you're like gonna become a badass, like
Mhm.
spiritual warrior. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. I like
Um, because like once you've dealt with this, there's literally nothing else that can come your way that you can't deal with, because I feel like this is one of the worst like mentally challenging things, because you feel like you're like stuck
that.
in this horrible state. And once you pull yourself out of that and be like, I did this, then there's really nothing else that you can't deal with, I think. So yeah, to anyone that's really struggling, I know it's horrible, but you're gonna get through this. You're gonna get to the other side, and you're gonna be stronger than ever, for sure.
Yeah. I love that attitude so much. It's like, it's interesting because with existential fears and like DPDR, obviously too, like you're not just afraid of something you can avoid.
Mm,
If you're afraid of heights, you can avoid heights. If you're afraid of relationships, you can do things like that. But if you have this deep-rooted fear towards life and death and your own emotions, basically, because that's a big part of DPDR is being afraid of yourself, you cannot escape that. You cannot ever run from that. And so the only way out is through. And I feel like you're a very beautiful example of that. Like someone that was just like, okay, let me just go through and come out at the other end.
yeah. Let me just run through this real quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more because the trigger is literally existence.
Yeah.
Um,
Escape.
I wake up and I'm triggered. Like it's not for the faint-hearted for sure. But I think like if you're going through this, like I know it's like quite cliche saying, but like you've been given this life because you're strong enough to live it. I fully believe that any challenge that you get, like you've been given that because your the people, the higher power knows that you can deal with this. Um, yeah, and this is another thing I wanted to mention. I think I mentioned this before. Was also kind of watching people's near-death experiences is something that helped me. And I actually did message you about this because I was wondering, I didn't want it to become almost like a compulsion, like reassurance that helped me in those moments of anxiety. Um, so just be careful with that. If anyone wants to like start watching them, but I think if you're kind of someone that hasn't really thought about life after death much, and then suddenly this happens to you, near death experiences really helped me form a positive perspective of life after
Yeah.
death, because most of the accounts are like overwhelmingly positive, and watching them I'm like, great, I can't wait to go there,
Yeah. Yeah.
because everybody describes it as the most beautiful, amazing thing. And they explain like in our human bodies we can't actually like understand or like contemplate what it's like, because we're in our finite bodies and everything is like, it's like beyond that. So that also helped me with the acceptance, because I'm like, okay, I'm in a form where I can't actually comprehend the answers to these questions. But people who have been there have come back and been like, guys, it's great,
Yeah.
nothing to worry about, like it's amazing. And people who have come back have been like, I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
So that's also something that helped me. And now every time I think of the afterlife, well, 95% of the time it's like amazing, incredible. I feel safe, I feel at peace.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's
I think any kind of just like opening yourself up to a different view on like spirituality, you don't have to find proof or truth or like scientific facts on like what's gonna happen, but just opening yourself up to allowing yourself to perceive it from a different way really works. Like if that's through near death experiences, if that's through maybe a religion or spirituality, as long as it comes from a place of not being overly compulsive with it, I think it's a beautiful way to approach it. So, last question to round off today. Like, if there's one final word that you'd like to say to anyone that's struggling right now, what would it be?
um, I would say right now you're looking at two people that have felt like they could never recover from this. And here we are talking about our recovery stories, and in a better place than ever. And this can and will be you. It will be you. You just have to push through, comfort yourself on the dark days, and reach out for support, because the support is here. There are courses available, there are videos available, and you've got this.
Thank you so much, Tillie. All right, this was it for today's interview, guys. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you have questions for Tillie, just drop a comment. I'll make sure that she gets your questions and that she maybe can answer them. And yeah, thank you so much again, Tillie, for joining today. It was really lovely to meet you and to hear your story. So yeah, I hope everyone has a beautiful day today that got something from this story, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.